highly anticipated Indian Wells third-round match between Coco Gauff and Eala ended in disappointing, really heartbreaking fashion as Coco retired down 2-6 Love 2 due to a left arm injury. Gauff won their previous match a couple weeks ago in the Dubai quarterfinals, only dropping 2 games. It was 6-Love, 6-2. This match, of course, was very different. Coco didn't hold serve one time in the match. She had 4 game points at 2-1, and she had a 40-love lead at 2-3, but couldn't get over the finish line due to double faults or just errant forehands. Gauff, who finished the match with 7 double faults, noticeably went for a lot more on her second serve in this match, hitting it with an average speed of 98 miles per hour.
The match was over. Coco Gauff slowly walked toward the net, exchanged the traditional handshake, and shared a few quiet words with Eala. No microphones caught it, and no one in the stadium could hear what they said. But moments later, Gauff revealed exactly what happened at that net. And what she shared told the world far more about these two competitors than the final score ever could. It wasn't about the result, it was about respect. The kind of respect that only exists between players who know. They just battled at the highest level, so now that you know what Eala said to Gauff at the net and everything Gauff later said about her, there's a bigger question to ask. Does this moment change how you see their rivalry going forward? Could this be the beginning of one of the most exciting matchups in women's tennis? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now.
Yeah. Well, that stinks. 2 of the game's brightest stars. You hear Coco Gauff apologizing. There's no need for that.
My arm is like going like this the whole time, so I'm sorry.
An apologetic Coco Gauff. That just speaks to her class. She is a one of one.
Coco Gauff sat down at her post-match press conference at Indian Wells, and one question immediately came up the moment everyone watching had noticed. What exactly did Eala say to her at the net? After the match ended, the 2 players met for the handshake, but it wasn't just the usual quick exchange. They paused. For a few seconds they spoke quietly before walking away. Gauff looked disappointed, Eala looked concerned, and fans could tell that moment carried real emotion. When asked about it, Gauff gave a simple answer. She said Eala just told her she hoped she would feel better. That was it. Short. Genuine. Human. No drama. No theatrics. Just one competitor checking on another after a difficult moment. And honestly, that tiny exchange at the net says more about Eala than any statistic from the match ever could. Because being respectful when you lose is expected. Being genuinely kind when you win is something else entirely. Especially when the player across the net is the same opponent who defeated you 6-0, 6-2 just 2 weeks earlier. But to really understand why this moment mattered, you have to rewind the story a bit. 2 weeks before Indian Wells, these same 2 players met at the Dubai Tennis Championships. That match wasn't close. Gauff dominated from start to finish, winning 6-0, 6-2. That type of scoreline sends a very clear message. It's the kind of result that spreads across social media instantly, with people pointing out just how big the gap still looks between a rising player and one of the top stars in the world. And in that moment, those observations weren't unfair. Gauff was simply the better player that day. She controlled the tempo, dictated the rallies, and Eala struggled to find any rhythm, so when the draw at Indian Wells paired them together again, most fans expected the exact same story, same players. Same outcome. That's usually how it goes when the gap between 2 players looks that wide. But Eala clearly had other ideas. When she arrived at Indian Wells, she came back with a completely different approach. In her post-match interview, she explained that she studied what happened in Dubai and made adjustments. She decided to play more aggressively. She focused on staying sharper mentally, and she increased the intensity in her movement and shot selection. And the difference showed immediately. From the very first set, it was clear that Gauff wasn't facing the same opponent she had dominated 2 weeks earlier. The numbers tell the story. Eala landed 68% of her first serves and won 59% of those points. She also created 6 breakpoint opportunities and converted 5 of them. Against the world number 4 against a Grand Slam champion, those aren't lucky stats. Those are the numbers of a player who came in with a clear strategy and executed it perfectly. Meanwhile, Gauff was dealing with a physical issue early in the match. She called for the trainer and received treatment on her left shoulder and arm. Her first serve percentage dropped to just 44%, and in the first set alone she committed 7 double faults. It was clear something wasn't right physically, but that doesn't erase what Eala was doing on the other side of the net. She came prepared, she adjusted her game, and she forced one of the best players in the world into a very uncomfortable match. And when it was all over, instead of celebrating wildly or making a statement, she simply leaned across the net and asked if her opponent was okay. And when you consider that Coco Gauff has a massive global following and one of the loudest voices in modern tennis conversations, her support carries real weight. When a player like Gauff publicly praises someone, it shapes how millions of fans see that athlete, especially those who might not have been paying close attention to Eala before. From Eala's side, the respect was just as genuine. In her own press conference after the match at Indian Wells, Eala spoke calmly about Gauff, calling her a great player who will always be a tough opponent. She explained that in tennis you can't control how well your opponent plays, the only thing you can control is your own performance. And that mindset showed in how she handled the moment. She didn't celebrate the retirement. She didn't try to turn the situation into a bigger victory than it was. Instead, she acknowledged the circumstances, expressed sincere concern for Gauff's health, and focused on the one thing she could truly take from the match: her own performance. And what a performance it was. Injury or not, you don't win a set 6-2 and break a top player's serve 5 times by accident. You don't maintain a 68% first serve percentage against a top 5 player by getting lucky. The foundation of that win was real. The execution was real. And Gauff herself made sure to say that publicly, shutting down any narrative that might try to downplay what Eala accomplished on that court. Now the next challenge is waiting. Eala moves into the round of 16 where she will face Linda Noskova, a powerful player known for hitting the ball hard and bringing plenty of experience at the top level. Noskova won't make things easy, but Eala enters that match with something incredibly valuable: momentum. Not just momentum from results, but confidence built on real performance. The kind of confidence that comes from stepping onto one of the biggest courts in the world and outplaying a Grand Slam champion so convincingly that the champion herself goes out of her way in a press conference to give you credit. That's where Eala stands right now. 20 years old, climbing the rankings, playing the best tennis of her career, and sitting in the round of 16 at Indian Wells for the first time with Coco Gauff telling the tennis world that the tournament just got a lot more interesting. And that moment at the net, it turned out to be incredibly simple. Eala just told her, "I hope you feel better, get well soon." No drama, no performance for the cameras. Just one competitor showing genuine care for another. But that quiet moment actually says everything. It shows who Eala is when the spotlight isn't chasing headlines. It shows who Gauff is when the match is over and there's nothing left to prove. And it shows that this rivalry, however it unfolds over the coming years, is going to be one worth watching. Because the tennis between them is exciting. But the respect between them might be even better. Coco Gauff didn't just reveal what Eala said at the net. She also showed the tennis world exactly how she views this rivalry and where she believes it's heading. And honestly, it's hard to disagree. If you want to follow every chapter of Eala's journey as it unfolds, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned. Because this story is only getting started. By the time the second set began and Coco Gauff lost her serve in the second game, it was already clear what was coming. The decision to retire from the match didn't shock anyone watching anymore. At that point, it wasn't a question of if it would happen, it was only a matter of when. But what Gauff said afterward in her press conference is the part that truly matters, and strangely, it's the part that didn't get nearly enough attention. She admitted she felt terrible about having to retire. "You never want to retire from a match," she said. Then she added something even more telling. Gauff explained that the reason it bothered her even more was because of how well Eala was playing. She made it clear she didn't want the retirement to take away from Eala's performance. Think about that for a second. A player dealing with pain and an injury serious enough to force her out of the match stood in front of the media, and her first concern wasn't herself. It was making sure her opponent received the credit she deserved. That says a lot. Gauff could have easily focused only on the injury, expressed disappointment, and moved on. No one would have questioned it. But instead, she went out of her way to tell everyone that Eala was playing great tennis and deserved full recognition. And then she said something that revealed just how competitive she really is. Gauff admitted she would have preferred to stay on the court and lose 6-0 rather than retire from the match. Think about what that means. the world number 4, a Grand Slam champion, said she would rather take a brutal defeat on one of the biggest stages in tennis than walk off and leave the match. Unfinished, that's competitive pride at the highest level. But even more importantly, she framed that statement around not wanting to take anything away from Eala's performance. Almost casually, she added another line that caught a lot of attention. "I think she's going to have a great tournament." Coming from Coco Gauff, that's not just a polite compliment, that's a prediction from someone who just spent nearly an hour across the net watching exactly what Eala is capable of when her game is clicking. And when a top 5 player says something like that, the tennis world listens. Oh, step back and look at the bigger picture here, because this matchup is quickly turning into one of the most intriguing rivalries on the women's tour. The head-to-head record now stands at 1-1.2 matches. 2 completely different outcomes. The Dubai Tennis Championships, Gauff dominated from start to finish with a 6-0, 6-2 victory. But at Indian Wells, before the retirement happened, Eala looked just as dominant, possibly even heading toward an even more one-sided scoreline, only this time in the opposite direction. That kind of swing tells you something important. Neither player has fully figured the other one out yet. And that means every future match between them is going to be unpredictable. That's exactly the type of rivalry women's tennis thrives on, not just established stars facing each other repeatedly, but a rising challenger who can take a tough loss one week and come back 2 weeks later looking like a completely different player. That storyline is compelling, and both players have the talent and personality to keep it interesting for years, and to her credit, Gauff has been incredibly generous when talking about Eala. Even back in Dubai after beating her, convincingly, Gauff made a point to praise her opponent. She specifically thanked Eala for bringing new fans into the sport and talked about how Filipino supporters had filled the stadium and created an incredible atmosphere. She even admitted that the crowd support for Eala made the venue feel almost like a home match for the Filipino star. Gauff called it great for tennis. She said she understands why people root for Eala, and even said she roots for her too when they're not playing against each other. That kind of public support from an established superstar toward a rising player isn't always common in professional sports. Some athletes become defensive when a new challenger starts gaining attention, but Gauff has done the exact opposite.